What's up, Ragin Nation? My name is Alex and you're watching the Ragin Ronin review. In this video, I will be reviewing the Bourne Legacy. The Bourne Legacy is the fourth installment of the Bourne movie franchise, made famous by Matt Damon playing the title character of Jason Bourne. The first three movies were directed by Doug Liman and Paul Greengrass, and this new movie, the Bourne Legacy, the directing duties is handled by Tony Gilroy, who not only directed the movie, but he also wrote the screenplay for this movie and the first three movies. So really, Tony Gilroy is someone who knows the story and the characters more than anyone else other than the original author who wrote the novels that these movies are based off of. If you don't already know, the Bourne movie franchise is based off a series of spy novels written by Robert Ludlum, and each installment in the movie franchise is based off the novel of the same name. With that being said, I'm not here to compare the movie with the novel. I have no knowledge of the novel, and therefore I'm just here to review the movie as a movie. Now, when you're looking at the title, The Bourne Legacy, you're probably thinking, where the heck is Matt Damon? Where is Jason Bourne? Is Jeremy Renner playing Jason Bourne? Well, that is the movie's main flaw, and I'll get into that a little later in my review. The first thing I want to talk about is the story. Unlike the original trilogy, which has Jason Bourne fighting through amnesia and trying to discover his roots, the Bourne Legacy really has nothing to do with any of that. It's about Aaron Cross, played by Jeremy Renner, and really, it's 2 hours and 50 minutes of his character trying to survive. His character is what you call an outcome agent. This was something that was not explored in the first three movies. In this movie, you have the agency trying to kill off the last remaining outcome agents. As outcome agents, they take these pills to enhance and maintain their physical and mental abilities. However, there was one pill that was meant to kill Aaron Cross, but sometime during his training, he dropped the pill and he ended up surviving, thus throwing a monkey wrench in the agency's plans to get rid of all outcome agents. And from that point on, the entire movie is really about Aaron Cross trying to survive. And I really don't mind that. I don't mind that this movie is kept very simple in terms of its story. But really, it gets quite complicated, and it is mainly due to the fact that this movie's title carries the name of the title character in the original trilogy, and that is Jason Bourne. I'll get into that in just a second. Let me talk about the characters first. The only characters that you really need to know about are Aaron Cross, played by Jeremy Renner, and Dr. Marta Shearing, played by Rachel Weisz, and also Colonel Eric Bayer, played by Edward Norton. Colonel Eric Bayer is someone from the agency who essentially wants Aaron Cross dead. And then you have Rachel Weisz's character, Dr. Marta Shearing, who's the one who is responsible for manufacturing these pills and administering them to the outcome agents. And then of course there's Aaron Cross, who's no Jason Bourne, but he's not really that much different from him. Not only does he display a lot of really great physical abilities, but he's very convincing as this agent who just wants to survive. He's just someone who just wants to get away from this outcome agent CIA nonsense and just start a new life. And I think it's just because of that solid determination and of course Jeremy Renner's performance that makes us like his character. Jeremy Renner really does do a good job for not only playing the protagonist, but also the main lead for the new franchise. And while I felt that Edward Norton was just a little bit underused in this movie, it's kind of made up for by Rachel Weisz, who plays Dr. Marta Shearing, because she's the type of character that brings the innocence into the story and also brings the characters down to earth. Because her presence begs the question, why is this happening to me? I'm just someone who works in a lab. Why do the bad guys want to kill me? And that's when Aaron Cross comes in and says, do you want to survive? I want to survive. Come with me if you want to live. And that's when all the action happens. And like I said, this movie is all about survival. And it makes for some pretty cool action sequences, but the action is quite far and few because Tony Gilroy is no Paul Greengrass. Now let's talk about the direction in this movie. The Bourne Legacy compared to the Bourne Ultimatum is totally different. The Bourne Ultimatum just so happens to be the best installment in the franchise, and it has a lot to do with Paul Greengrass's direction. The movie from a visual standpoint is still quite similar. When you watch the movie, you can tell that Tony Gilroy was trying to mimic Paul Greengrass's visual style. It comes complete with a lot of handheld camera work, extreme close-ups, and hyper editing during action sequences. But I do have to say that I like what Tony Gilroy does with the camera in some really cool camera moves in two major action sequences. In one set piece, he has the camera follow Aaron Cross as he climbs up from the ground to the second floor of a house, through the window and into a hallway where he shoots an agent. And in another set piece, he has Aaron Cross dropping down between this really tight, narrow alley space between two buildings, and the camera drops down along with him, bringing the audience along for the ride. that was cool. And I think that Tony Gilroy took a little bit from the Paul Greengrass action playbook, because in the Bourne Ultimatum, he does a bit of the same thing during a rooftop chase sequence. But with all that being said, Tony Gilroy is no Paul Greengrass, especially from a storytelling standpoint. What made the Bourne Ultimatum so successful is Paul Greengrass's razor-sharp storytelling and precise direction. What I mean by that is that Paul Greengrass is so detail-oriented, and he gives us the right amount of information without making it too overloaded. Every scene in the movie is there for a reason and serves a purpose. And that purpose is helping us understand the characters and the story on an emotional and narrative standpoint. In The Bourne Legacy, Tony Gilroy's got the characters down, he's got the story down, but the narrative is just a big mess. And this is all because of a very technical issue with the script, and that is that Universal wanted this movie to tie in with the original trilogy. I understand that they have to keep the name because it's based off the original novel, but it hurt the script. But by doing that, it made Tony Gilroy's screenplay totally overloaded. What they did was that they had scenes from the Bourne Ultimatum in the Bourne Legacy, and this was mainly to tie in the parallel story with what was going on in the Bourne Ultimatum. The movies actually play out at the same time, and this is to remind the fans that this movie takes place in the same universe as the original trilogy, and that poses a problem. The movie was trying too hard to make it accessible to fans of the original trilogy and also make it marketable to the audience who knows nothing about it at all. This movie was 2 hours and 15 minutes long, and it really didn't need to be. 20 to 25 minutes of this movie was probably made up of scenes from Bourne Ultimatum, such as random scenes of Pamela Landy, Simon Ross, Ezra Kramer, and Noah Vossen. These scenes really don't need to be there, but Tony Gilroy put them in to tie everything in with the Bourne Ultimatum. But really, it's not necessary because the Bourne Legacy ultimately is a standalone film. It's a spin-off. And actually, when you shave off those 20 minutes of those scenes, you can still have a story that makes complete sense. So really, from a storytelling standpoint, Tony Gilroy needs to tighten things up a bit. The movie went on for too long. Now it brings us to the action. Now the big question is the action as cool as or better than that of the Bourne Ultimatum? Jeremy Renner, while I'm sure he's fully capable of doing all those physical stunts himself and is very convincing as an outcome agent, really wasn't involved in any action sequences that I felt was groundbreaking for such a high-profile franchise. It really just felt like another chapter in this series told through a different perspective. The rooftop chase in the Bourne Legacy was not nearly as exciting or as high energy as the one in Bourne Ultimatum, and the motorcycle chase just went on for too long. Like, it really didn't get to the point. And I think the main reason why I didn't get overly excited about this big grand chase was the fact that there really wasn't any ultimate point to it. It was really just to survive, and every hero in every movie almost always survives. But there's got to be something bigger than that, and none of that was actually explored. What happens to the bad guys in the end? What happens to the agency? Is Aaron Cross going to put them in the media? Is he going to kill them all? And if it's just running for the sake of running, then that's really not a good enough reason for me to care for their survival. And when you really think about it, you know what that's all about, because they're planning to continue the franchise with Aaron Cross as the new lead. And I'm totally fine with that because I do want to see what happens next, but for this movie, The Bourne Legacy, as a standalone movie, is very anticlimactic. Even the agent that they sent in to kill Aaron Cross from Thailand, that guy was weak. He was not nearly as threatening and dangerous as Desh in The Bourne Ultimatum. Ultimately, the biggest flaw in this movie was the overloaded story. Just trim away all that unneeded exposition. This is a standalone film. It's a spin-off, and it happens at a different time and place as the Jason Bourne narrative. That is something else that we don't need to explore anymore. It's not about Treadstone, it's not about Blackbriar, this is about outcome agents. Still, the movie was entertaining, and it did contain a really cool action sequence where Aaron Cross rescues Dr. Marta Schering from these interrogators, and that was a really badass scene. That showed that Aaron Cross is a true professional at what he does. And it also showcased the good chemistry that Jeremy Renner had with Rachel Weisz. I like seeing them on screen together. They worked really well as a team. All in all, I give this movie a 6.75 out of 10. Not quite a 7. Watch it if you're a fan of the original trilogy, but it's nowhere near as good as The Bourne Ultimatum. But if you're watching it with no knowledge of the franchise at all, you might be a little lost. 6.75 out of 10. Watch this movie on a cheap night. My name is Alex Yu, and thanks for watching the Ragin Ronin review. I'll see you next time. Peace. What made the original unique, and that is where this movie fails. One thing that Len Wiseman didn't do too well with regards to the characters is developing them.